Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro from Texas. He sits on both the Foreign Affairs and Intelligence Committees. Congressman, thank you for making time for us this evening. I hope you were able to hear some of our conversation with your Republican colleague, Anna Paulina Luna. I'll start with your reaction.
Well, look, obviously, I strongly disagree with a lot of the things that she said. I think that this whole time, Donald Trump made it clear what this war and this action was about. It was about regime change, about oil, about going after valuable resources, and about land. And hearing the president speak today and watching the action overnight, I'm even more disturbed because it's as if the president didn't learn any of the lessons from Iraq or Afghanistan, didn't learn any of the lessons on regime change. And he's done a complete 180 from where he was as a candidate who pitched himself to the American people as a peace president, and now has taken us to war in Venezuela, has overthrown their leader, and is threatening to take us to war in places like Colombia and Mexico as well.
Have you, Congressman, just kind of like on a philosophical level, have you thought of what Donald Trump's foreign policy doctrine is? I mean, it seems for anyone who's watching Pete Hegseth these days, it's FAFO, which seems to be like the motto that they're really proud of, which is like mess around and find out. It seems like that's what they're using as a threatening menace to leaders all across the region around the world. But do you see something more deeper than that as a foreign policy doctrine by the Trump administration?
I wouldn't say that it's deeper. I think his foreign policy is make Trump rich. I don't think he's doing what's in the best interest of the United States of America or even Venezuela. I think he's doing what's in the best interest of himself and a small circle of cronies that he's going to help take over industries in Venezuela and make billions of dollars off of. And it's it's in a way, as an American, it's sad to say that about an American president. But I really believe at this point that when the Supreme Court issued that ruling that gave Donald Trump wide immunity for quote unquote official acts, that to him was taking off any kind of guardrails or shackles, and basically in his mind allowed him to do whatever he wants to do to make money for his cronies and in some cases his family. You think about the proposed development of condos and other real estate in Gaza that Jared Kushner was going to be a part of. Jared Kushner going to be part of that Paramount deal and then got shamed into backing off of it. The Trump company still doing real estate deals all over the world. And so I think this is another play for Donald Trump and the people that he wants to help make money. And in the meantime, you have Americans right now who are losing their health care coverage because Donald Trump and the Republicans allow those health care subsidies to lapse. My own health care went up $200 a month. I'm having to pay $2,400 a year more myself, and there are others who are getting hit even worse. But besides that, you all know that the price of groceries, of childcare, of rent, of just about everything has continued to go up, and yet we're going to spend billions and billions of dollars to let Donald Trump and a small group of people, quote unquote, run and fix Venezuela. It makes no sense at all.
So, Congressman, I know you're in the minority, but what can and what will Democrats do here? Because I think many of your voters, your supporters, they feel like these escalations, they just keep coming. I've seen people make jokes today about feeling like every morning they wake up and something new and illegal has happened domestically or internationally. And so what more are you going to do than just write some strongly worded letters and posts on X to express your displeasure?
Well, I was part of drafting a bill that was considered on the floor along with Jim McGovern and Thomas Massey, Republican legislator, as you all know, a bipartisan piece of legislation that failed by 2 votes. If we had been able to pass that in the House, that would have been the first step in preventing what happened overnight and forcing the President of the United States to come to the Congress to get permission to do what he did. I asked Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, directly at the briefing that they gave us in that last week of December before the holiday break. I asked him whether they would come to Congress for an AUMF, for permission to do this kind of thing. And he said, we will come to Congress and seek approval for anything that requires an AUMF, but we haven't started making any plans for any kind of land strikes or land invasion. Well, that obviously was not true. They didn't come to Congress at all. In fact, they waited until Congress went on break to take this action. And so hopefully there will be bipartisan support when we bring those resolutions back up and ask Donald Trump again to come to Congress for any further actions. So that's what we're going to be working on this week or next week when we return to Congress.
Does this whole thing have Rubio's fingerprints on it? We know that he has long wanted Maduro out, that he has his sights set on Cuba and elsewhere. So do you see him? You just said he lied to you. Is he fundamentally the person most responsible for where we are right now?
Yeah, I mean, besides Secretary of State, remember, he's also the National Security Advisor. He's got like 4 different titles with the Trump administration. So as I mentioned earlier, what you see is a small group of people around Donald Trump who Donald Trump believes will do whatever he says. Unlike his first administration, where you actually had people who would buck him now and then, and he ended up hating and dumping all over in tweets over the years. Now he's got around him people that will do whatever he wants. And he's given them a lot of power to do that, whether it's Marco Rubio or Stephen Miller or a few other people. And so that's what we're seeing now.
All right, Congressman Joaquin Castro, it's always a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much for making time for us this evening.
Good to be with you all.